Hey folks, thanks for joining me for this episode from the Embellish Pod. If you got here by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Hopefully I'll be found on any podcasting platform that exists. And if you can't find me on one, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com and I'll get that taken care of. You can also find video versions of this podcast on YouTube. You can find all of my links on Instagram or TikTok at embellishpod. I have a website. It is www.embellishpod.com. It's a place to pick up these links, episode details, and more. Today, we're going to be talking about a spirit category we've never talked about before. We're actually going to be talking about vodka. And the story behind the brand and the personality that we'll be talking to is very, very compelling. And so I invite you now, this is outside of the norm for us, but it is time well spent. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode as much as I enjoyed the conversation. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to be consuming this particular episode from the podcast. We're going to have Sam joining us, and Sam is joining us. I don't normally talk about vodka, not for any particular reason other than not many vodka brands reach out. But when you guys reached out, I kind of did some initial research before I said yes, because I want to hear and understand sort of a compelling story behind a brand, right? Because that's what most of what I do is. And so I'll start with teeing off. Hey, Sam, here's an opportunity to introduce yourself. Give us the 60-second version, because you're an Air Force veteran, defense industry work. How do you end up importing Ukrainian vodka into the United States? And how does this brand become a thing?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me on the podcast, John. I really appreciate it. It's important for us to get the word out. We're brand new. So I grew up in the DC area, joined the military when I was 17, beginning of 2005, went into Air Force Security Forces, served in Katrina, served in Afghanistan, wound up eventually hurting my back pretty badly. I couldn't deploy anymore. Got out after 12 years and went into the defense industry. And in the defense industry, I did a lot of work doing weapons, equipment, armor, night vision, things like that for U.S. forces around the world, including the special operations community. So when Russia invaded Ukraine with the full-scale invasion in early 2022, I got a phone call from a friend who's a former Green Beret, who I'd known and worked with for a long time. And he said, hey, man, major ally in Europe is getting invaded, largest ground war in 80 years, and the world isn't really responding to it. And that's not sitting well with a lot of us. So some of us are putting together a team to go over and advise the Ukrainians when stopping the Russians. The Ukrainians are asking us for a gear procurement requirements acquisitions guru to come teach their guys. And we thought of you. We leave on Saturday. No pay, no insurance, no backing. Do you want to come? And so my wife and I went and talked it over and decided it was something we couldn't turn away from. So I packed up my body armor and chem gear and medical equipment, and I got on a plane to Poland and joined the team and went overland into Ukraine about week 5 of the invasion. So I go into Ukraine with the team about week 5 of the invasion. We go to a safe house that we're all staying in to meet our Ukrainian counterparts and work with them. And I immediately fall in love with the place. I thought the people, the mission, the fight, the unbelievable resilience of the Ukrainian people just blew my mind. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was the most black and white, good and evil thing I'd ever gotten to see. So I start immersing myself in the culture and learning about the work and trying to make a difference in any way I can. But as I fall in love with this place, I also fall in love with the wine and spirits. And the first night in the safe house, I'd never liked vodka. I thought I never liked vodka. It was a way to get drunk in college. I didn't think there was really much to it. And so the first night, you can imagine, we're sitting around this, safe house table, and there's, assault rifles and body armor and stacks of documents. It's pretty much what you would expect. And then the deputy director of this unit puts a bottle down on the table and says, "Now we do cultural exchange." And I was like, "Is that vodka?" I'm not really a big vodka guy, bad memories from college, but I'm good. I said, "This is not vodka. This is Horilka." I said, "What's Horilka? What looks like vodka? What's the difference?" He said, "Vodka is Russian, and it can only make you angry. Horilka is Ukrainian, and it opens your mind." Um, and I tried to say, "Oh, okay, I get it. It's fancy Ukrainian vodka. Great. I'm good." Well, it wasn't optional at all. So I took my first drink, and I went, "This is unbelievable. That's some of the smoothest liquor I've ever had in my entire life." I couldn't. I was astounded. And so I'm staring at this bottle, which said Hetman on it. And he said, "You Americans, you don't know anything about vodka. You think it's this neutral, tasteless thing. And we've been making vodka for 700 years here. We invented it here, and it's an art form here." Uh, and so I started drinking it on a regular basis, and I couldn't believe it. So I wind up staying a lot longer than the mission was initially supposed to be. I wind up over there for a number of weeks, and then I come home to the U.S. and continue volunteering from the U.S. I spent about 5 months as a volunteer for the Ukrainians, and as I'm back in the U.S., I'm searching everywhere I go for these amazing vodkas, but they didn't exist on the U.S. market. I couldn't find them anywhere. Um, and after about 5 months, my wife says, "Dude, you have to get a paying job again. We need income." Um, so because of my access in Ukraine, I was able to sort of create a job for myself in the U.S. defense industry that would let me go work in Ukraine, and work on things at a more strategic level. And I started going back and forth to Ukraine much more. And as I did that, because I couldn't, of my frustration that I couldn't get these amazing vodkas in the US, I did what any self respecting American combat vet would do. I started bootlegging, and carrying back, suitcases full of vodka. Now, you can't fly out of Ukraine because the sky is closed other than to combat aircraft. There's anti air defense systems, things like that. Um, so you have to go into the EU and fly out of the EU. You also are not allowed to take more than 1 liter of alcohol into the EU. So I would smuggle suitcases of vodka across the border into Poland and then uh, fly home with it and declare it to U.S. Customs at the airport in the U.S. Um, the uh, I did this several times before in late summer 2022 getting caught by Polish customs. My bag got selected for random inspection at the border, and border guard puts it on the conveyor belt to the X-ray, and I'm just watching it going into the X-ray. The gig is up at this point, and he goes, "Cigarettes, alcohol." I go, "Yeah, I have some alcohol." And he goes, "1 liter?" "Okay." "No, I have more than 1 liter." He goes, "2 liters?" "Okay." And no, it's more than 2 liters. He goes, "How many bottles?" And I'm like, 30, 40. And he grabs me by the collar and pulls me in close, screams, "1 liter, 1 liter." And he slams my bag down on the inspection table, unzips it, starts pulling, tells me to sit down, starts pulling all these bottles of vodka out. Um, and as he's doing this, I'm like, this is not good. And he opens the other side of my suitcase and sees my body armor and helmet and medical equipment and stuff. And he looks at it, he looks at me, he looks at it, he looks at me, and he goes, "You go." Um, so that was my near miss there. But I started realizing as I got more and more demand for the vodkas and later wines that I was bringing back home from friends and family. I wasn't selling any of this. This wasn't a business. This was just me for me and my friends and family. Um, that uh, this was amazing, and everybody had the same reaction to it that I did that first night in the safe house. So in January 2023, I got together two close friends. One American veteran, retired Marine Corps officer named David, who'd been my mentor in the defense industry, taught me everything I knew. and really knew a lot about entrepreneurism, had many successful companies, knew distribution management, operations, et cetera. And Maxim, also a serial entrepreneur and Ukrainian veteran, who had been with me in the safe house and had been sort of become my close friend and guide to Ukraine. I got the two of them together. I had introduced them to each other and said, "Hey, I want to start a company to bring the best of Ukrainian spirits to the United States and use it to do cultural diplomacy for Ukraine through wine and spirits, and show Americans something other than the war they see on TV every night. Show them the beauty and craftsmanship, and give them something they can enjoy and love from this beautiful place that is an ally sustaining horrible times right now. And to keep a mission focus on it, I want to contribute to the cause directly with what we do. So we then reached out to a new group forming called Invictus Global Response, which was all American EOD and combat explosive ordnance disposal and combat engineer veterans who go over as volunteers to Ukraine and clear Russian landmines in liberated towns. Um, and we pledged to donate 10% of our gross profits every month to them, and have since become their main source of funding, their largest source of funding for their operations in Ukraine. So that's what's kind of the story of how it was born and how we got there initially.
You do an incredible job of telling the story of kind of how it comes into be, and you mentioned in there, kind of the way that you came to the spirit category is through a cultural exchange, and uh, the guy that's sharing it with you hit the nail on the head, right? We don't understand vodka, mainly because it's not ingrained in our culture in the same way it is theirs, in the same way that bourbon specifically, but some parts of whiskey in the United States are really ingrained in our culture, and we know the story and we want to learn about it. And so what's interesting is that you're kind of bringing this spirit that does have that story elsewhere, which is the thing that I've always tried to figure out, like how do you, and this is the problem you have to solve, how do you as a brand creator bridge the gap that the story exists for vodka, for clear spirits in other places? How do you bring it to the United States and make people care about that story as well in the same way? And this seems like an interesting path to kind of go down. You mentioned that you're giving 10% of your gross profits back to the country and help with sort of rebuilding after what is a really serious and sort of heinous situation that's going on. That feels like a really tough thing to do. You're building a brand and giving away 10% of your what are probably narrow profits to begin with, because you're a budding brand, right?
Yeah, that's accurate. It means what we need to do is get the word out there and have volume to be able to, sustain. But no, I mean, like that, we are a mission first company. That's what we believe in. And it's real. Ukraine is now the most mined country on the planet. Monty, the executive director of Invictus Global Response, our demining partner, lost his right foot in Ukraine to a landmine in the summer of 2023. Right now, he's over in Ukraine again, demining and training Ukrainian demining teams on his fourth time over on his prosthetic. Um, even the loss of a limb won't stop their team, and so we're willing to we'll work on tighter profits to be able to make a difference in that cause. They actually just were able to buy a mine clearing machine that has chain flails that goes through farmers' fields and detonates mines from a distance. And they were able to buy it largely because of our donations.
You know, there's so many places that I can go with this, right? Because you're giving me all of these nuggets, and my ADHD brain is kind of going haywire. But you said you're a mission first company, and I guess for a person who doesn't know what does mission first mean, like in the business world, you hear that term on a regular basis, but it's not necessarily pervasive. What do you mean when you say you're a mission first company?
That everything that we do is derived from the dual mission of wine and spirits diplomacy for Ukraine and demining and humanitarian life saving in Ukraine. Right. This is, uh, we don't, do this to make money and then do that. The reason that we donate 10% of our profits every month before overhead, before anything else, regardless of what the finances look like, is that that's the core of what we do.
And trying to resonate with an American consumer. I feel like we'll hear the term "the most mined country in the world," and it doesn't mean a ton to us because the odds of a person in the United States coming across a mine is really, really limited. Other places understand this far better, but the humanitarian angle absolutely can resonate with people because we understand whether it be natural disasters or other things like those things sort of connect back to us. But if I kind of dive back and think about, okay, number one, you're giving away 10% of your profits from a budding company, but the source of the thing that you're selling is coming from a nation that is in the middle of a war still. And so trying to get
That's
things
right.
back out of it have to be difficult as well. Can you kind of, give me how do you make this work? Right. You're a procurement specialist. So there's some key subject matter expertise that you have, but like how do you make it work where you're going to get a product out of somewhere to sell and then give back money to it? Like there's a lot of steps here, it feels like.
Yeah. So, I mean, some things are different working in a war zone. Now that said, when you see devastated cities along the front line and everything on the news, that's not what the whole country looks like. Ukraine is the largest country in Europe. It is, it's bigger than the state of Texas. And along the front line, it does look absolutely horrendous. But for 30 million people, they can't just stop because of the war. Life has to go on. People go to school, businesses continue to operate, and people take cover from air attacks when they happen. It's an unbelievably resilient place. It's amazing to see how life moves. It does affect the logistics some. As I mentioned, you can't fly out of Ukraine. We can't sail out of Ukraine by sea because the water is contested. So we have to move stuff on trucks to a different part of Europe and then make sail from another country to be able to get products. There are sometimes war-related delays with border crossings and closings and things like that. But it's something we've learned to work with and work around, and we haven't had any difficulty because of it. We've been able to deliver on time, on schedule, uh, every single time from the beginning of our shipping, which was only this past March. Also, the distilleries that we work with are not in contested areas. They're both deep in Western Ukraine, the vodka distilleries. One is in Lutsk, Ukrainian Spirit, uh, beautiful distillery in northwestern Ukraine. And then Hetman, which was the bottle that I had that first night in the safe house, is in the city of Lviv in central Western Ukraine, about an hour from the Polish border. So their locations uh, make it a little bit easier for, especially for the vodkas.
So and then one of the other things, and you said the new machine that you're able to purchase is got flails that's going to disarm mines in active farmland. Well, not active farmland, but in farmland that could be active once it's sort of cleared up. Which kind of begs the second portion of this question, right? These distilleries are still operating. Ukraine is a large country, and a good portion of that is farmland. Are there any supply chain concerns kind of going farther down the food chain and thinking about the growth of the crop that's going to subsequently become the distilled spirit in a world of does it go into food supply or does it go into distillation supply?
Not really. So uh, in Ukraine, right? So our vodkas are made from corn, and keep in mind the massive breadth of Ukraine. Russia occupies 19-ish% of Ukraine, but that other 80% is growing far more than the entire nation of Ukraine. The 30 million people that remain are are able to consume. Well, a huge amount of it is exported, used for other purposes. Uh, there are areas that need to have mine clearance done where the Russians were and have subsequently been removed from. When the Russians are forced out of an area, they mine everything. They mine farms, schools, uh, churches, even playgrounds. And so when I talk about humanitarian demining, it's that kind of demining that Invictus does, returning the earth to its original intent, rather than being, an incredible life hazard, as opposed to like military demining, which would be demining frontline operational areas to be able to assault. They don't do that. They do. It's all humanitarian demining.
Yeah. So, and not to, I want to make sure we give enough time to talk about the really important mission of what you guys are doing, but we probably do need to discuss a little bit, the distillery partners, right? Where are you getting this from? How, you try what Ukraine has to offer from a spirits perspective, and then you want to pivot into sort of creating a brand, which is a thing that you haven't necessarily done before. What does the initial process of trying to figure out where you're going to source like? Is it just there's two options and you picked one of the two, or did you go through a series of distilleries? Like, how do you get to the partner that you have?
We visited a bunch. Now, I was really keen on Hetman because of my experience with Hetman and Ukrainian Spirit, honestly. I had my first Ukrainian Spirit towards the end of my first trip in Ukraine. Um, this is Hetman Elite. This is Hetman's sort of premier vodka. It won, as you can see the award, it won 98 points, double gold, best of show at WSWA, the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers Show this year in the blind tasting. And that's sort of Hetman's top product. This is Ukrainian Spirit, the one from Lutsk that I mentioned, which took second place, also double gold, 95 points. Uh, there were only 3 double golds this year, and each of our distilleries was one. We visited a lot of distilleries, but it was, we wanted the best quality, we wanted the best partners, people who really fit well into both incredibly high quality product and would be easy for Americans to understand and would help spread the message of the beauty of Ukraine. And we felt that Hetman and Ukrainian Spirit uh, were easy picks in that category. There are many amazing distilleries in Ukraine, and the vodka landscape is as rich as whiskey is here. Um, but these two really spoke to us, and as we had meetings, tasted vodka, learned from their master distillers, which, by the way, are both women at each distillery, uh, and have been making vodka for many decades. Zoya, who's the head distiller at Hetman, has done nothing in her life but make vodka since she was 22 years old, and she's 75 now. Um, as I said, it's an art form over there. And when we see things like that from these distillers, and we learn about the amount of work they do to create the beautiful product, to include their each has an unbelievable and unique water source. And as we know, water is a big part of making good spirits, particularly clear spirits. And the water sources they have are just tremendous. So that's kind of how we arrived at those two.
You mentioned, you mentioned that you went to some of these distilleries and you went through a tasting. And I'm very familiar with what a tasting for whiskey looks like, what a tasting for rum or tequila, most aged spirits. I sort of understand that, but what does it look like when you go in for a vodka? And I guess we keep saying vodka. That's the spirit
Horilka.
category in the United States that makes sense. And it's
You're right.
hard to try to get people to think of anything else. And so if you give them the name, the Ukrainian name for it, then you have to educate people on both what that is and what its corollary is. And so I get the kind of, let's just shortcut to, you might recognize it
Vodka.
like a vodka, but
Yeah, I mean, it is vodka. Fundamentally, it's vodka. It's just Ukrainians make a much more elevated vodka.
right. I mean, and bourbon is whiskey, but we're going to call it bourbon because it's better than just whiskey. Right. And so I
Right?
get
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
The,
yeah.
the it's
Exactly.
a subset of a subset, but
Yeah.
like, how do you set up a tasting there? What do you go in to experience? Are you looking for
So that was
municipality? Are you
all
looking
new
for
to
flavor
me.
profiles? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was all new to me. That was a whole new ball of wax, right? I had the same question. I was told, oh well, Zoya is going to do a tasting, the head distiller at Hetman. So we go in, we talk to her, and she lays out her expectations. Um, and we are told, you will not eat anything the day of the tasting until after the tasting. You will have a completely um, uh, n- uh, blank slate of a palate. You will not brush your teeth that morning. You will come in with a total blank slate for me to work off of. Um, you know, small but beautiful tasting glasses. And we were given vodkas that were numbered in these glasses with no idea what each of them was. And she wanted to establish what our preferences were and taste profile. Silly me. I still, I knew Ukrainian vodka was better, but I didn't know what it would be like. It was hard to imagine tasting a bunch of vodkas and them all being that distinctly different from each other. Wrong. Um, it was crazy, and so we ranked them, and then it was revealed where our preferences lay, and what we liked, and each compared with each other, and then Zoya went further than that, and she gave us a homework assignment for the next time for going back to the United States, and that we would review upon returning to Ukraine in a couple of months. Which was she wanted us to go out into the market and get all the most popular vodkas or stuff we liked and do the same thing and do a completely blind tasting with somebody else pouring with numbered glasses. So we had no idea. Um, and it was astonishing to see uh, across the American market, how different things were. And I won't, I won't talk negatively about anybody specific, but how some things that are marketed really, really well when tasted. And again, this is tasting vodka at room temperature, no masking anything with cold or ice or anything like that. Just sipping at room temperature, it was amazing to see what really outperformed what else, and uh, that is available on the U.S. market. And then we brought that back to Zoya, and helped her understand what was popular in America out of those items. I will say one that was a standout from my group that was tasting in the U.S. was Icelandic vodka, and Reka, and I came back to Zoya with that, and she said, good taste. That's glacier water. Here's why water mattered. And that really started my education on the process and how much water matters, how much the filtration process matters, et cetera.
So I have to ask the question, right? So you start the day off with nothing in your stomach. When you do a tasting with vodka, is it sort of like wine where you sip and spit, or you like just drinking this? You're sitting down and just running through a bunch of vodka on an empty stomach.
I was a little tipsy by the end.
Okay, that's sort of what I like. This sounds like a dangerous game that you're playing,
It
but I
was really,
understand that. Yeah,
really, really little sips, tiny
gotcha,
little sips.
gotcha. So eh, because everything that the American consumer historically has been educated on is that vodka needs to be flavorless and it's really just an ingredient and something else. We don't kind of understand this. And you're talking about flavor profiles. So what does that mean? Like do you have some kind of base level flavor profiles that should exist in more appreciable vodkas, right? Because this is not the $9 half a gallon stuff on the bottom of the shelf that you're just buying because it's a volume grain spirit.
Right.
This is something that's a little different than that.
Yeah. I mean, you can really sip this at room temperature and it's enjoyable like whiskey. Um, a big part of it comes from the water. Both of our distillers use their own water sources. Hetman has their own bottling plant, several hours from the distillery that they truck the water back from the Carpathian Mountains. Uh, that's where it is. Their bottling plant is in southwestern Ukraine, in the Carpathians, um, which produces this unbelievable mineral-rich water. Uh, that is almost a little funky to drink by itself because it's so mineral heavy and it's got this this mouthfeel to it that's very different, but it's amazing for making vodka with. Um, Similarly, Ukrainian Spirit has an artisanal well in the Volyn forest, deep, deep, deep underground, uh, at their distillery. So they each have their own bespoke, water source that gives the beginning of that mouthfeel and that profile uh, to it. Beyond that, they have their own filtration processes. Um, you know, between charcoal and these enormous, enormous vats, and series of vats, alternating charcoal and 100% quartz sand. Uh, that again just imbues it with this almost this man. It's hard to describe without to somebody who hasn't tasted it, but uh, this unique, slick feeling that combines with the smoothness of the spirit. There's also, I mean, again, with especially with our higher end ones, just you, you've never tasted something with so little burn, which it sounds wrong saying with a vodka, but it's true. Um, it's astonishing the first time you drink it.
So quartz sand is a new one to me, right? Like that's incredibly surprising, but I guess it starts to make a little bit of sense. Um, can you tell me a little bit about maybe the distillation process? Are they on a column? Are they, like
Continuous column, yeah.
continuous column? Like how pure are they trying to get this? Are they leaving anything behind? Like what does that process look like?
No, yeah, unbelievably perfect distillation. Don't leave anything behind. And then, especially with our higher end vodkas, for example, the Ukrainian Spirit Reserve, which we can get into, and the Hetman Elite, those are rested then for 60 days in their steel tanks. Uh, some of the less expensive vodkas don't quite have that in it, but
What impact does resting have? I guess.
you know, um, there's a certain amount of sorcery involved here and again, my background isn't in alcohol. I'd never done this until quite recently, but my understanding is that it allows them, as it settles, to remove the heads and tails from it and only get the body.
Yeah, and I can also imagine, letting it settle. Any batched product needs a little bit of time to assimilate, and this is effectively a large batch that's going to then go subsequently into bottles. Same thing with whiskey, right? You want to let it kind of marry itself together whenever you put
Hmm.
different sources of liquid, even if though it's continuous. Every single 3 ounces is potentially a different 3 ounces than 3 ounces before it because it's all
Right.
cycling through always. So we'll maybe step away from the process a little bit and let's talk about the brands specifically and kind of what you're bringing to the market. And so you reached over and touched the giant one that looks like a military tube of some type. So give us the story on what that is, and then kind of lead into to what you have.
So yeah, Ukrainian Spirit does some outrageous stuff. This is what we call the howitzer. So this is a 3-liter bottle of vodka of their ultra premium reserve. You can see that those labels are made of Italian leather that's buckled on like body armor. That's all stitched together. It has information about the brand on the back. This ring around the top is hand stitched on and then waxed to seal. That you can either get sort of by itself, and you can either get it in green and tan military colors, or in blue and yellow, traditional Ukrainian colors. But this one comes in. You can also get it in this tube. As you said, it looks military. Well, that's because it is. When a artillery shell is fired, you load the artillery shell into the cannon, and then you have to load the powder, the bag behind it, that sends that shell 20 plus kilometers. Right. Um, those bags are obviously really sensitive. They're full of propellant that is extremely flammable, so they have to be protected and shipped. This is an M119A2 artillery propelling charge case. It's solid, it's steel all the way up and down, and that's what they come in. But every time you fire a shot from one of those cannons, that tube gets thrown away. So, in an emotional, bit of support for their armed forces and the struggle that the nation is going through, they bring some of these back from the battlefield, have them brought back to the distillery. They resurface them, repaint them, wrap them in Italian leather, again, that's embossed with this gold lettering. And again, this is hand stitched onto the tube all the way up and down. Um, and that battlefield refuse becomes recycled as the coolest and most beautiful alcohol packaging you've ever seen.
It is incredibly distinct. And given everything you've just told me, that sounds like it would also be incredibly expensive, right? Because the process that goes into to acquiring that, bringing it back in, kind of reshuffling it into a manufactured good that is then going to be sold to the average consumer. A lot of people are doing a lot of things to make this happen, but it's the kind of thing you also leave on your shelf forever, right? Like
Right.
you may drink what's inside the
Exactly.
bottle, but you keep that thing because it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's our most expensive SKU. It retails at $1,000. Um, but
Honestly, I would have thought it was more than that. Like my brain
that's what
had
everybody
a number
says.
much higher than that.
Yep, that's what everybody says. Everybody's shocked when we say it's $1,000. We've already started. We put them on our website last week, and we've already started getting sales. Especially once somebody sees it in person, they just go, wow, that, what a statement of freedom and national pride, and it built into a spirits product. Um, but each distillery, right, like the whole country has mobilized to support their troops at war. This is on the other end of the spectrum. The Ukrainian Freedom retails around $14 a bottle. This is from Hetman's distillery, and yet it just blows similarly priced products out of the water in terms of quality. We've already had a number of restaurants and bars adding it to their well. Um, and we as we move forward with our vodka products, we're going to do some unique cocktail things, and some simple, some more complex. But for example, the first one that we're really excited about with all of these products is we want to get Moscow mules off menus in every single bar in America that we can. Um, we think drinks and spirits should support freedom and democracy and our allies. So we want to replace them with Kiev mules, which instead of coming in a copper cup, will come in a steel cup because copper is weak in Russian, steel is strong in Ukrainian, and be made with Ukrainian vodka. And we already have places signing up for that. We're in the process of getting 10,000 steel mugs made with our vodka brands laser engraved into the side of the steel, and we'll have an upgrade program where bars and restaurants can trade in their old Moscow Mule copper cups and receive free uh, uh, Kiev Mule cups for serving Ukrainian vodka and putting Kiev Mules on their menu.
And I'll be honest. I think the worst part about, aside from the name, the worst part about a Moscow Mule is having to deal with keeping that copper mug clean. That's such a
Right.
it's such a pain in the ass. But
And the steel mugs are dishwashable. Like they don't get all cloudy like the copper.
right, but I like the message behind it. I like what you're kind of after here. You're talking about a keep mule. What are some other? So I, I'm 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 old enough to remember a time where everybody wanted to be a blog writer, right? Like in the early 2000s, and blog was a big
Right.
thing, and I missed that. And so I've started doing this thing on Substack where I'm kind of exploring cocktails every month, trying to figure out the best version of it for me that I like. Um, and as I think about that, like what other vodka cocktails would you chase down as kind of an essential thing if you're launching this spirit category in the United States, trying to establish a foothold? What's the cocktail that you would kind of put as the signature for And it may be by brand extension. I don't know, but like where would you start?
So we've got a couple others in the works. There's one that's a suspension called the Ukrainian Patriot, that as it pours is separated into blue and yellow. So it looks like the Ukrainian flag in a glass. It's very coconutty. I don't have the whole recipe off the top of my head. And then we're working with mixologists to come up with some unique sort of key stuff, particularly drinks where the vodka itself isn't overwhelmed by the other ingredients, because the vodka is so good that it's a shame to drown it out like you would with a lot of American vodkas, where you don't really want to taste that. You don't. We do, and so we're looking to make some vodka forward recipes.
Yeah, you want it to be a star ingredient, not just a base ingredient. So maybe talk about the Ukrainian Spirit brand a little bit more. Kind of give me let's look at the bottle. Let's talk about flavor profile, whatever makes sense for what you have on hand, because I want to make sure people kind of understand what they're getting into, because this is more than just a vodka that goes into a cocktail.
Right. So, I'll start with Ukrainian Spirit. You can see the bottle there, right? You're kind of getting the blue and yellow of the Ukrainian flag, and Ukrainian colors. This in the front here, which you'll see on every bottle of Ukrainian Spirit, and on many other, on practically anything from Ukraine, you'll see the same symbol in the middle of the Ukrainian freedom right there. That's the trizub or trident. And it's an ancient symbol of Ukrainian sovereignty going back 1,000 years. There's coins from around 1,000 that have the trident on them, and it's been a symbol of that culture and civilization for an incredibly long time. Um, all of Ukrainian Spirits products feature it prominently. You can again see it on the tube here. You can see it on this bottle. Um, you're going to get a lot of blue and yellow. Um, uh, the the profile taste wise of Ukrainian Spirit, both Hetman and Ukrainian Spirit are incredible, but they are different. You the Hetman Elite, for example, let's compare these two. The Hetman Elite has a little bit more viscosity to it, and the taste profile almost reminds you of a sweetness, just the faintest, like distant note of it. Whereas Ukrainian Spirit uh, is a little less creamy in the mouthfeel, um, and you almost get a little hint of pepper in the aftertaste. The Speaking of which, they also have an amazing pepper vodka that will be releasing very shortly to the U.S. market. It just arrived, and we just got label approvals and everything like that.
So you mentioned a pepper vodka as a new release. Are there any other kind of brand extensions or line extensions or new things that you kind of foresee entering into the North American marketplace in the next, however long that you might be looking at it?
Absolutely, we have another vodka coming in called Ukrainian Soul, also from Ukrainian Spirit. That's going to be hitting at a lower price point, similar to Ukrainian Freedom. Uh, We're working on formula review for this. This is a bison grass vodka from Ukrainian Spirit. That may take a little bit because of the differences between U.S. and European formula rules. We have to make a slight change to the formulation from what the Europeans allow versus what the U.S. allows.
What is bison grass?
Uh,
If you know,
are,
you may not. I
yeah,
mean,
are you familiar with Zubrivka from Poland?
not even no, not even
Oh,
remotely.
okay. Um, Man, is it hard to describe? I mean, there's an actual leaf of bison grass in there. It's an actual type of grass um, that imbues vodka with a really unique flavor and some slight formulation changes. Under U.S. law, it has to be considered a flavored vodka. Anything that's not just straight, just like the pepper vodka. The legal category for the TTB is flavored vodka.
But this is using like a is the grass actually a grass, like a botanical grass that's grown type
Yes,
grass?
yes,
And so I guess, that that makes it more difficult to deal with, right? Because when I think flavored vodka, I think like, this has peppermint in it, or this is cake flavored vodka. You're talking about something that is naturally flavored because it is just a product
right,
of the earth. It's not that it doesn't feel like the same thing. And so I can understand wanting to like, okay, let's get this right. So
yeah,
the market doesn't look at it like,
and
oh, they just
and
added some liqueur into it or something.
and there are a lot of things like that. There's, we may be bringing in an herbal liqueur, a vodka-based herbal liqueur that's uh, really just unbelievable, especially for people who like herbal teas and things like that. Think of that, but as a spirit.
So I wonder, and this is probably going backwards a little bit. You mentioned, this is corn based. Do the vodka brands in the Ukraine get kind of really invested in the kind of corn that goes into their vodka in the way that whiskey nerds do, or is it less of a concern because they're coming out with a cleaner product in the end?
I think it's less of a concern because there's more of that. I mean, the corn in Ukraine is all amazing anyway. If you're familiar with black soil, the most rich and fertile soil in the world, Ukraine, despite being a teeny tiny fraction of the world, has about 30% of the world's black soil. So everything that grows there not only grows well, but uh, has all the nutrients it needs. You get perfect grains, whether it's corn, whether it's wheat. Um, it's the agriculture there is just outrageous.
So, and we're getting closer to the end of our time for conversation. I do want to take a few minutes. Let's talk about like where can I get vodka from you guys? Like, is this an online thing? Can it
Absolutely.
be on premise? Where am I able to get stuff?
So all of the above, right? So we've been expanding pretty rapidly in stores and on premise. We're in DC, Maryland. We just actually got Ukrainian Spirit into the Virginia ABC system because of our mission. They sort of bumped us forward, and you added us to 10 stores. You can look online on the Virginia ABC's website and look at the stores it's available at, or it could be special ordered at any store in Virginia. We're also in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, um, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, Washington, California, and we're growing to more states constantly. Uh, in addition, you can buy it online on our website. Our website is www.spyrt worldwide, SPYRT. Spirit in our company's name is Ukrainian for alcohol. So SPYRT worldwide.com. And there's a web shop where you can have it shipped to you around the country.
And so, and kind of corollarily, if I want to keep up with what's going on continually, is there a place where I can sign up for email notifications? Do you have an active social media account? Are you guys going to be like out at events or anything like that in coming
Absolutely.
months?
Yeah, so we have active Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, the stuff you would expect. We do a fair number of events and trade shows. We'll be at the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America show in Las Vegas at the beginning of February. We'll be at the National Control State show, NABCA, and a number of others throughout the year. And then we do local, on-premise events, off-premise events at retailers around the country. Check us out on Spirit Worldwide on our social media, and you can learn more about that. We should have a consumer mailing list soon. That's one of the things we're working on ginning up.
And you guys are attached to kind of a really noble effort in what you're doing. And if the world was perfect and a ceasefire hit tomorrow, the kind of the mission of what you're doing doesn't change.
It
for the
does not.
foreseeable future, because there's a huge kind of a significant cleanup that occurs for years and years and years and years kind of going forward. But if you were to, if you were to kind of look 10 years into the future and say, we still exist as a brand and we're growing, what does 10 years from now look like? What do you want 10 years from now to look like, maybe?
10 years from now, I mean, I hope we're nationwide, and that we've helped spread the word about Ukraine as an ally, as an incredible country, a wonderful place to be, and its people, as well as the plague of post conflict landmines. You know, it's not just years. I mean, we're talking with the level of mining contamination. We're talking many decades. So this is, these devices are going to continue to plague populations and be a danger until they're all removed. And so I look forward to the day where our funding of those efforts, because of our growth in sales, is so phenomenal that we can report on entire areas that we've been able to contribute to now being mine free.
And you hit it right, because if in my history is not what it needs to be in my knowledge base, but I distinctly remember conversations about, there are still being munitions being found from World War II all over Europe, right? And so this is a really long cleanup. But as we think about the active situation that is happening in Ukraine, maybe some parting comments that, you know it's one of the quietest wars that has ever existed. At least it feels like here in North America, right? Where it's a sub note in a lot of stuff, but we don't talk about it significantly. What are some things that you sort of wish people had more awareness of about what's occurring, or kind of the hope of the future, or something to just take a chance to inform some folks that might not hear it otherwise?
I'd say one, the unbelievable resilience of the Ukrainian people. These are folks who, the rest of the world didn't think Ukraine would last 3 days under a full scale military invasion, and now it's 4 years later, and they're continuing to survive and hold back what was thought to have been one of the most powerful armies on earth. Um, the that they need the support of the world. They need humanitarian help. They need weapons. They need moral support. And uh, through our mission in Wine and Spirits, we hope to spread the word about that as well. Um, if people want to read more and understand more about the war day to day and what's at stake strategically, how this affects American national security, which it does, look at the Institute for the Study of War. They give a really good explanation of what's going on, so people can familiarize themselves with the plight of this beautiful country.
Well, Sam, I want to thank you for kind of bringing all of this forward. It's the exact kind of conversation that I want to be able to have. I don't like the fact that we have to have it, right? If we never had to have the conversation, that's probably a better solution. But in a world where we live currently, the situation we're in, I'm glad to have this anytime. If there's any parting comments, anything you want to kind of leave here, the floor is yours. If not, we'll wrap it up here, and we'll check in again in a few months and see kind of what's going on with you guys.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I'll tell your viewers when you have your first Ukrainian vodka and toast with it. Cheers in Ukrainian is Budmo, Budmo.
Budmo.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to talking to you again sometime. And just really appreciate your time and educating me a little bit as we go along.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this episode from the Embellish Pod. If you enjoyed this, please leave me a review on whatever platform you're consuming this on. Leave a comment if at all possible. Hit me up on social media on TikTok or Instagram using @EmbellishPod, and give me a follow so you can keep up with what's going on here. I can also be found at www.embellishpod.com. It's a place to pick up these links, episode details, and even some articles about cocktails or things that are happening within the spirit space. Thanks for stopping by.